Welcome back to Therapist After Hours. My name is Alexandra Sinclair, and here with me is Zach Butterfield. We are both therapists, and we thought it would be a good idea for us to have our after hours moment when we get to process some aspects of our wonderful job. And today we're a little bit nervous. I mean, I am more than a little bit because we decided to talk about the aspect in therapy when male therapist sees female clients and female therapist sees male clients. How that plays into the process and the relationship. Where do we start, huh? So we do. I do want to say, I don't remember now. I did want to mention that as hard as it was in the past when we were recording this, our priority is always to protect the privacy of our clients and make sure that if they ever hear it, they don't feel like they've been talked about, because that's definitely would not be good. And I feel like today it might be extra difficult. So I don't know. So you may see us sort of like kind of beat around the bush or kind of talk in circles, not finishing sentences, because there's that example we have in our heads and we don't want to like use it, right? But we'll try our best. That's all we can do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Maybe we start with like, why is it so like awkward to like talk about this? Like, why it's so difficult like of a subject to broach? And that's because like there seems to be an added layer of dynamics with like clients that are opposite sex. Just that like there are a couple of times where like I've like heard from girls like, oh, that's because you're a guy and you think that way, type stuff like that. And it's like, no, you're missing my point. Like it's still relevant whether I'm a guy or not.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So like there's like just like other layers like that make it a little bit more complex. Or what are you thinking?
Yeah, there is. When I'm thinking about that question, it was like, why is it so difficult, right? To kind of talk about it. And that's probably one of the. It's just so many things playing into that, and I think it might be difficult for us because this is where we take a look. Like, oh, okay, what is it about my gender, me being a woman, that makes a difference to my client? You know.
Right.
And I do think like I'm betting you do that a lot. There are moments when I literally, okay, would he struggle like this with that if I would be a guy? You know.
Right.
That type of like what. Yeah, like, because we do play a role, not to sort of, okay, I'm jumping all over a little bit here, but we'll get to stuff, right? Because there's always also thinking today, like we do, sometimes it's very obvious, sometimes it's not obvious, but we take on a role of a mom, dad, husband, wife, like all that.
Yes. Yes.
I hope your head will not blow up.
Yes.
Right, where those issues that came up with other relationships will come in here, right? So obviously, if I see a female client, her relationship with mom can be less complicated, you know, like, right. Or she can see me as sister or as a friend, like that type, right? When there's a male client, I'm either gonna be mom, wife, ex-girlfriend, or, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what else, really, right? Well, sister.
Well, I think this is like important to like, I know like probably like in one of the first episodes we did, we talked about like transference and countertransference. That I didn't believe in and found out that's totally a thing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And then you saw some girls.
Yeah, so then I saw teenage girls and young adult girls, and I was like, okay, this is definitely a thing. But like, it's like, it seems less weird to me now that like I've been a counselor for a long time than like it felt at the beginning. But that's why I feel like it's important to just like talk through that again of why it's like less weird is when you are in like a your vulnerable spot, which you are in counseling, it really activates like those base vulnerable things for you, for like the client, and like sometimes like it does it for us as well. And so you're saying like, we play the role of mom or dad and stuff like that. Like depending on our age, depending on how we're interacting with them, what we're saying and stuff like that, we do activate that type of stuff. Like it's very common, at least for me, to hear, oh my gosh, you remind me of my friend, my brother. You remind me of this like teacher I knew. Like it's very activating on those core like relationships and memories of the client. And so it's very easy for them to put that on us or see us as that role. And so like you're saying, that's very complicated if they have like real significant struggles with like the opposite sex parent, or like they just got out of a terrible relationship or something like that. And some of those things come up for us. Like, what if I happen to say something that like their ex-boyfriend just said, and like not that like their ex-boyfriend said that in like a great way or handled it appropriately or whatever, but that was part of the thing that was activating them. So if I happen to say something that reminds them of that or whatever, it could be very activating. So I think that happens more with opposite sex clients than same sex clients.
I would agree.
And so I think that's why it's a little dicey to talk about this, because like just the nature of the counseling relationship can push on those core buttons, and a lot of them can be with like opposite sex parent or with like dating relationships and stuff like that.
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes it's right, pushing that buttons. A lot of the times I can see the comparison in a client's head. Like, my wife, if my wife would say, sort of, that's comparing kind of, that's different, that, because gender is one of the first things we see about the person, right?
Absolutely.
Like we walk in and sort of, that's why it's difficult when you're, anyway, because we see a person and that's one of the first things we notice, and then there's already sort of like we have set approach, right? With men I interact this way, and with women I interact that way, and that's on the table with women, and that's on the table with men, sort of, So,
the other aspect of that too is like, if you're calling like an agency or whatever to get set up with a counselor, one of the first things they ask if you have preference is, you prefer a male counselor or a female counselor, or if you don't have any preference. Like I feel like that's one of the main questions, and then it's like religious preference, like same religious preference doesn't matter to you. Like I feel like those are like the main questions you can ask about like if you're going to line up with a counselor. So
that's a very good point. Yeah. I think that's usually they ask, right?
They usually ask whatever. Like probably those two are probably the main ones they ask. And then they ask about, like what your problem is, and then kind of match you in there. So it's kind of like, as therapists, we're almost identified by our gender too. Like, would you feel comfortable working on this with the guy, with the girl, or neither?
Yeah. And for a client, it's okay, just FYI, for a client, it's okay to not have a preference, to not even think about it, not worry about it. Some will. I know that, some female clients will want to talk to a woman because there are some ways, some things that a man will... teenagers still. That it's going to be hard for a male therapist to relate to. Not that they cannot do that, they can.
Right.
But some, so you may have a preference or you may not. That's not, That's
and so it doesn't.
You don't have to worry about it. If you're not thinking about it, don't think about it.
Great point. Great point. I think the other layer that'll probably be uncomfortable for us to talk about, so we'll venture into this lightly, is like you see a lot of guys with like sexual addiction problems. There's been times I've seen girls actually with like pornography problems or sexual abuse. And that's not necessarily always like sexual abuse from like a guy to a girl, but sometimes girls to a girl. And so in that case, they usually feel much more comfortable. But if it's like guy, girl, that's uncomfortable. Or recently, like I've had like this pocket of married females with like maybe like like sexual intimacy problems, and like that actually has been surprisingly comfortable for me to like talk about, which is odd, because I'm not married and
you're not a female,
and I'm not a female. But like getting to like that emotional layer and stuff like that, like I feel like there's usually like an emotional component to that, and so
but I can see how a married woman would, would want to talk to you about, like that stuff, because it's almost like she gets to hear from men's perspective too, right? Like what can she expect, what she cannot expect.
For sure.
And that might be helpful. That's the same, right? Well, with male clients, not just the pornography addiction, but any that or any other like struggles in their relationships. Like I can tell them like, oh, okay, if your wife does not want to be intimate with you, that really may not be about you. Like really not even close,
Right.
So they get to hear that from someone else other than like tired wife brushing them off, know? So, so yeah, I guess, okay, we have some benefits. That, right?
Well, what is it like with you to talk about guys with like pornography addiction or sex addiction and like
so I sometimes think about it. Obviously, I don't have because I don't get to be a male therapist sometimes, I don't get that comparison. Okay, I will tell you something that I believe helps in my case individually. Accent.
Yeah.
I think the fact that I don't sound like their mom or wife or, I think that actually helps. It's sort of like, I'm like, like they're sort of like from a whole different packet of humans, so. So at least I like to think that that it kind of makes them a little bit more comfortable. I'm sort of like more removed from their life, from the girls they interact with.
Right.
This makes sense, right?
Yep.
Like, I'll stick with that. Okay.
Yep.
So I think it's I guess I've done it enough that it's not like uncomfortable for me to have to say masturbation, pornography, and that's the language, and that's part of it, right?
For sure.
I do need to remember that they may be uncomfortable hearing that from me, or me asking a question. So it really varies from client to client. Sometimes I just don't say those words for a few sessions.
Right.
Sometimes we don't even get to it and let them sort of, they use like a thing or, like the substitute, whatever, and I'll stick with it.
Right.
For a while. And then when relationship is really established and they know that also, and I don't know if that's just Utah, probably not. But when client comes in and struggle with pornography, he already like told mom or wife or something, right?
Yep.
Chances are they have been judged. Wife felt hurt and mom freaked out. And that for them initially saying something, and the usually first reaction from a female was like, what? That's disgusting. How can, or something, some variation of that. So when they do get to come in, and sometimes they already know that I know why they're here, right?
Yep.
So, and I don't know if that's better or not, to be honest. I like when they have the whole control of when to tell me what, And I kind of, and they get to tell me, and I just like kind of sit there and just sort of, all right, that helps them. I think in the long run, it might be more difficult because it may have been more easier for them to tell a guy. But now they see that not all the girls in the world will just be mortified by that.
Right.
So then wherever they kind of will work through what this means, am I too much? Is this normal? They get to hear that from a woman, like, okay, is that disgusting? Am I a pervert? And then I get to tell them, usually 99% of that no, it's like,
right.
If everyone is a consulting adult,
right.
So I don't know. That's answer. That was the easy part of this,
Yeah.
So,
well, the for a male therapist who also sees a lot of like sex addiction and pornography addiction, like I think it's really valuable for them to like talk about that with a female therapist, although a ton of them are very uncomfortable doing so.
Yeah.
Because like like one, I feel like guys aren't socialized enough to be able to like discuss things very well, let alone things that like are very shameful or like
just
that aren't just talked about, really personal stuff like that.
Yeah. And I do like to, I say it like many times because again, in Utah, I feel like it gets underestimated with, with the church getting involved and the questions and all. Like I did not grow up in an LDS church, and I cannot imagine an adult ever asking me if I masturbate. Are you kidding me? Like, no, oh gosh, I would be mortified. And that happens to teenage boys here, right? Maybe girls too, I guess, right? Yes. So
maybe less girls, but
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And that changes now, I hear. There is like a parent needs to be present or something like that, right? So I'm glad. So I make a giant point of that whenever possible, that wow, like, I know this is personal, you don't have to tell me. And then if they do, like, I really appreciate you sharing that, you just met me, and like, I make a huge deal of how I don't know.
Absolutely.
How personal it is, and sometimes I do put in like, I'm a girl, and sorry.
Right. But there's no need to apologize. Like, sure, that might be then more uncomfortable for them to say that to you than maybe to me and stuff like that. But like they still usually feel some element of shame when talking about me. Like, they still avoid the words. I still hear a lot of time like, I messed up. And I'm like, I need to know what that means. Like, we need to speak clearly.
Did you like spill milk, or
like, shame is part of the cycle that leads you to doing this again. So like, let's say what we mean, kind of thing. And so maybe that's a little bit easier for them to get used to with me than you.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's really can be crucial to their development to like work through that with like a female therapist. Because you're right, like there's so many times, and I'm like, so I'm not going to try to be critical of women's reactions to this, because women can react how they need to.
No, but it is different, right? Like, it's different when a husband tells a wife, right? And this is like the first time she ever like, is this a betrayal? Like, is this cheating? Like, she doesn't know yet, right?
It's such an emotional reaction for moms and wives.
Oh yeah,
like, because they usually quickly go to their worth as a mom, their worth as a wife, their body image. And sure, like that's definitely a thing, but like that can be very, very damaging to guys. Like, if they're like, oh, this is like, wow, that's a reaction. It can also be helpful to some extent, so they can see like, oh, like women are more like rounded than just like body parts and objects and stuff like that. But like, I do find that like women's emotional reactions, which it's fine, they can have the emotional reactions they want to, are very intense when it comes to that stuff. And so to be able to talk through that with a woman can be like really healing.
I hope so.
I think so. I think so.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think about. No, it's not a real regenerate, like clients that have the pornography addiction, but I would not, I don't know, my experience does not confirm, but overall, men are less accustomed, right, to talking about feelings, and I say it all the time, like, don't worry about it, that's your fault, like, I was in preschool talking like, oh, this is, I feel that, and you were not encouraged to do that, right? So that's like sort of puts another layer where they kind of feel not, as confident. I don't know.
Yeah. To kind of change this a little bit, like me working with women, I feel like a similar feeling comes up if we're talking about sexual abuse, and it was with a guy. Like, first of all, like you said, like I'm very honored if they decide to bring that up, and I tell them like, wow, like that's so good and stuff like that. I think similarly, it could be very healing for girls to talk about that experience with the guy if it was a guy that abused them, just because like it kind of has a similar result. Like it's processing it through. They sometimes then that distorts their relationships with other guys. Like they kind of expect to be treated poorly by guys. So to be able to like feel validated and walk through that with a guy, like I have no
Absolutely.
expectations of them at all.
Right.
Like that obviously happens naturally in dating relationships and stuff like that. And so I think like some of that stuff is obviously very uncomfortable for them. But some of that can also then be the very healing aspect of it as well.
Yeah, and this is what I kind of like whenever we say the relationship is the therapy. That is so important. Like here, right? Sometimes a teenage girl comes to you, and I'm sorry, but you might be the first male ever, that treat her with respect and like interested in what she has to say, or not look at her as an object, you know. And this is kind of like getting those. Oh, okay, so that's. I can do this with a man, I can do this with a guy, which is very variable, but it brings up.
Brings up
I'm
how
betting
being single...
that teenage girls have crushes on you all the time.
Probably.
Right? They're definitely...
Probably.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah, that's sort of the assumption that I guess a male therapist, you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That
and
sooner or later, yes.
I do. And so I'm extremely strict with boundaries. And like it's obviously different because obviously like I'm thinking through helping them, or I'm thinking like I'm going through analyzing, and they're feeling vulnerable and exposed, and then like they're experiencing like, oh, I'm listened to, I'm understood. And so that like releases oxytocin in their brain, which like is a connecting hormone, right? Where oxytocin probably isn't rarely ever being released in my brain during any counseling session.
Okay.
And so like it's a very different relationship from a client to a therapist perspective than a therapist to a client. And like not to dismiss how much I care about my clients, but it's like I'm their one person that they're trusting to sort through all these things, but they're not my one person that I'm listening to all those things. And
you're going to be listening to another person
I'm going to be listening to another
now.
person an hour from now. And so they're going to have a much greater emotional experience than I'll ever have in any session. And so, so like you said, like sometimes then they think that like, especially like in abuse cases, like they think that, oh, if I feel this certain way with somebody, that usually means that there's like a sexual component, right?
Yeah.
And that's
attraction.
Something that needs to be changed in their brain, that like connection doesn't mean then like you have to have like then like a sexual relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely a case in abuse for sure. But like just in general, like I'm sure like it doesn't help that I am single and stuff like that. And there's sometimes maybe like if they try crossing boundaries, not maliciously or not super inappropriately, but like I just will not have contact with them outside of counseling. I won't have contact with them even when we're done counseling and stuff like that. And even though the ethics rule is like for counselors is like 5 years, I think. You could then have a relationship with someone in their family or them, but like for me, it's never. For me, the rule has always been never and always will be never. Like there's just no way.
Yeah. So just to kind of like normalize for like clients, if any like clients are listening, like, oh my goodness, I totally have a crush on my therapist. That's totally normal, right? That's something that can come up and happen, and you don't have to freak out. You can talk to your therapist or not about this, whatever. But it's just the connection that does get confused in our brain a bit, like it does, like, you feel close to this person, you feel taken care of and appreciated, and, you feel important to that person. You will have that, it's going to sort of like, go in there, right? Somehow. So that's just, that's sort of like sometimes people feel that for the doctor that saved their life, right? Sort of like this. Yeah, that's normal. Don't worry about it. It's going to pass.
That just reminded me of like a huge plot line in Lost.
Oh, really? Oh, this is forever.
So like it's not, like you said, it's not unnatural, even though it's weird to talk about. We're just not going to have that same experience. And like, but also we're just straight up not going to do it because that defeats the purpose of the counseling relationship.
Definitely. Yes. That would be, this is why we have that very hard rule in our ethical code, don't do it.
Right.
Can do lots of damage if that kind of pure and sacred, as we like to call it, right? And this one-way relationship ends up with that. That's super confusing and opposite of healing, basically.
For sure.
You know?
For sure. Yeah, and it's tricky. Like if I'm talking about like particularly sexual abuse, like they usually have very poor boundaries in relationships.
Yeah.
And so if those feelings are getting activated by me, it's also the place to practice boundaries. And that's usually something that's disrupted in abuse anyways across the board, is understanding of boundaries, understanding of self-respect for the survivor of sexual abuse, but then also like relationships with other people. And so I kind of encourage them to even set boundaries with me, like I don't want to talk about that today, or stuff like that. Even stuff like that is probably one of the most therapeutic things they can do. In a way, because like they don't have that. And so like it is a relationship to practice those things, but like we said, like you also have to like learn that like just because those feelings are activated does not mean that's a relationship for you or like a fantasy. Stuff like that. But it's tricky.
Yeah, but I like that when you said that it's really a moment for someone who's sort of like relationship patterns got so messed up, right?
Yep.
To practice, I'm setting boundaries, but I'm also respecting boundaries.
Right.
This person can say no to me, and that doesn't mean that they reject me.
Right.
Right. And I can still feel safe within the boundaries of this relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally. Like that's why we don't. So really, the therapeutic relationship does not leave the room. Does not leave.
Absolutely.
That's why it does not leave.
For sure.
Does not turn into dating, basically. Ever. Right.
Never.
And we said, I think we both said that it's sort of. That's one of sort of like those mindsets we have when we put on the therapist hat. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of some hot celebrity men that would like walk into my office. If he's a client, he's like neutral, really, right? In that respect, I will know that he's a male. Obviously, I have to keep that in mind. Right. But it does not, like, I don't know, it's just sort of like a different category in my brain for
sure.
Yeah. Right? Yes. Yeah.
Another maybe slightly dicey area to go into with this is kind of like the power dynamics. And like obviously, like as a therapist, we usually start out with a disproportionate amount of power in the relationship, just because like they're coming to our office, we're the expert, we know everything about their lives, they barely know anything about our lives. But I find it interesting that, and I'm sure that like you have men like maybe pushing or trying to push you around or tell you like what they want to hear sometimes like that. I usually get that from teenage girls. Teenage girls, I can feel it.
I get that from teenage girls as well.
That's probably just the teenage girls too. But teenage girls, first of all, like sometimes they're like the most vicious creatures on earth, especially to each other. Like it's unbelievable what they do to each other. But sometimes like it's very tricky, especially like with like a parent dynamic and stuff like that with teenage girls, is because I need teenage girls to feel listened to and understood so that I can help them. But usually I can feel them trying to get me to say something so that they can use as ammunition to people in their lives afterwards. And so I see myself getting into those traps. Sometimes I realize it, sometimes I don't. But then that's like, that usually comes up. Parents are like, why did you say this? Or something like that. It's like, I don't know if I actually said it that way. Like, I doubt I did because I know myself. Like, for example, like a generic example, there's a research study, multiple research studies actually, that particularly for women, when their same-sex child gets to the age that they experienced abuse, it causes the parent's brain to reprocess the abuse and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of research about that. And so I've found that to be very much the case, that if I'm working with a teenager, and sure, like the teenager has things they need to work through, right? But it's not to the extent that the parent thinks, then I start thinking along the lines of like what is being activated in the parent and stuff like that. But then also I feel like that can help with like compassion for your parent. Like your parent's obviously going through something emotional. So I do talk about like trauma and be like, well, it's quite possible your parent had like a traumatic situation your age, or there's something that you're activating, to like try to be compassionate. But then they use that as ammunition. Well, you're just traumatized and stuff like that. It's like, no, like my therapist thinks you're traumatized and you're just a hot mess and it's your fault, which is not the intention I'm coming from at all. Like my intention is always healing and stuff like that, and connection and compassion and stuff like that. And so if that's something I bring up, and then particularly I found it with teenage girls, use that as ammunition in fights with their parents later. Like it's not okay. It's not okay, but like that helps, like you can't connect with people this way for like teenage girls. You can't
but
relate
I think
to people.
for some teenage girls and other humans, I think that might be just part of the process, right? It's like, oh, and then they have to get like upset and all that. Oh, now I get it. You put that, because they do, right? Like, some of the emotional baggage has been put on the kid, and now she's gonna lash out in like not very delicate way, let's say, right? And hopefully after that she gets to like, oh my goodness, like take a moment to look at the parent side. But that's interesting though. That's
where I feel like the power struggles with me and women. And that doesn't, like, once they turn 18 and they're out of the house, that goes away. I don't know like why.
It does, right?
Why that's the case. It totally changes. Sometimes there is a tendency for women to still do that, but it usually just takes a reminder that like this is us talking. You can't use this as a manipulation tool. Like you have to, you can't say like, well, my counselor thinks this, so you should do this. Like you still have to stand up for yourself, for you. Like if you're bringing in the expert kind of thing, like to prove your point, that's manipulation. Like it's just not okay. But like usually they resolve that quicker than teenage girls do for whatever reason.
So do you think that I don't know, that being a male versus female therapist kind of makes it even more intense? That because there is that, I mean, and you are male, and typically that's, I mean, if you've had powerful male.
If you've had that experience too, then maybe not 100%, but I feel like at my core personality, like I'm a nice guy, like I want people to feel understood, I'm compassionate, stuff like that. I feel like maybe that aspect of me being a guy gets taken advantage of by some of these girls that are more engaging in like manipulative gaming kind of behavior. Just like the social maneuvering, the social tactics, like maybe I fall prey to that more often. Or maybe I'm
more used to that as a girl, Maybe I'm serious.
Because I don't have sisters either.
That's right.
I don't have sisters. My mom doesn't really play those games. My mom's very direct. She's not like a passive-aggressive, beat around the bush, and stuff like that. And I did have friends that were girls growing up, but none of those engage in those games with me. Like, I also like games.
You wouldn't play, like you wouldn't participate.
I wouldn't play. Like looking at my life, my brothers were pretty straightforward, but then also boys, like, you just like fight it out and you're fine kind of thing. Where girls, there's all the revenge and stuff like that. Like that kind of plays out. So, and like because my mom is that way, I feel like my life has been expected that people are going to be straightforward. So like if girls so this is like Zach, not the counselor, and then it obviously relates to Zach, the counselor. Zach, not the counselor. If I'm feeling games, you're usually not going to be a part of my life.
Yeah.
And so my friends that were girls through high school and stuff like that didn't play very many games at all, or at least they weren't playing it with me, or like they were so good at them I didn't realize that it was going on. And so I'm grateful for that. Like I'm grateful for my friends like that. But so like Zach, the person, has very, very little tolerance for that. And so then in the counselor mode, maybe I'm not always expecting that because I'm expecting people to be straightforward. But like now I've learned to watch for it. But like it still comes up. It still comes up.
It does.
And it's like, no, you can't interact with people this way. They don't like it.
Well, you get to call out the client.
I get to call out the client, which I don't necessarily get to do in life.
That's right. Well, you don't have to deal with that in life, right?
Right.
Yeah, but it might be kind of, I don't know. But it's a good experience either way. I also want either way for the client, you know, to be, if they try it, if they did that with you, they did that with others, right?
Absolutely.
I always keep that in mind. If there are like teenagers and parents are not co-parenting very well,
yeah.
So they're used to, oh, mom said I can do that. And that's, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be in this as well, right? Like, oh, Alex said this, right? So we're like kind of like, I don't know, assuming this sort of playing adults, basically.
Right.
That's going to, can happen. But I also wanted to say, when you do counseling with teenagers or kids, sometimes I say it to the parents, like, sometimes I will make a parent a bad guy, like, you know, or sometimes I will tell, because that's kind of part of the process, right? Where they can feel 100% of them are on their side, right? What the teenager will do with that, I don't know, you know, but sometimes it's just going to happen. So just to like parents out there, this is just part of the process. We know you're not evil and stuff. It just kind of, they get to process any negative feelings they have about you with us, and our job is to validate it. So they could kind of like grow from that and move on.
Absolutely.
You know? So
absolutely.
So that's, anyway, yeah.
And so like you bring up a good point that like me in my mind, I understand there's always more to the story, but they have to feel understood. So I'm probably going to team up with them and how they see the world. But like I know there's more. I know that they're probably vilifying a parent and stuff like that, and I know that like that's not the case. And so like we had this whole discussion about parents and teenagers, but I'm not thinking that. And if I think like, hey, let me meet with the parent, I'm not expecting you to come in for me to beat on you or like degrade you. But I do hope that you're open to the idea that how you're approaching things may not be the most helpful, and that there's things that you probably still have to learn and address. But yeah, like I'm not thinking that.
I think that was like overall good idea to get put out there, that it's sort of like part of the process, but we do know that there's kind of more to it.
Right.
It's just not, as they're like working through it in a project, it's not, it wouldn't be helpful for me to say, but see, mommy didn't mean that. Like that's, you know, they need that time and space to sort of feel like, yeah, my life sucks, you know, this was so unfair, you know.
But then also the teenage brain is, up until they're about like 13, how their brain's developing is that you are their core person. But then how the brain develops is it develops its sense of identity or its sense of self. And so it does have to break off from that parent unit. And so
your kid is supposed to not like you for a while.
Yeah, and it's okay. Like it's okay if your child doesn't like you for a while.
They're supposed to disagree with you. They're supposed to have non-research, not thought through political views for a while before they get to vote. You know. Like that's all part of the process. Don't worry. We're just talking about teenagers again.
Right.
You know, so.
There we go. That's okay. I am interested though, like we were talking about we started like with going to like the power dynamics of like like how I feel like teenage girls play me sometimes to try to gain power. Do you deal with guys that are a little bit more controlling and narcissistic, and you feel like they try to do the same thing, try to get you to say certain things or believe, like team up with them against their wife or...
So I'm thinking, that's a difficult question. okay, I'm gonna like put away the narcissistic part for a moment. It does come up for sure, right?
Yeah.
But overall power dynamic is kind of interested, and it really is. Yes, men have some stuff in common, and some like they're very in so many different ways. But like one way or the other, they will sort of. I don't know, like they will try to, a lot of men will try to control the session for sure, right? It's sort of like, this is what we're going to do. And I'm not going to talk about, this is what I need help with. And this is what I do not need help with.
Right.
All right then. So, and and they also had like all sorts of experiences with women, right?
Right.
And I keep in mind, and I'll say it because male therapists said that to me, that as a female therapist, I need to remember that as far as like talking about feelings, some male clients, not to say most, will be at the kindergarten level.
Yes.
Yes? Not because they're, I don't know, not smart enough or they haven't done research or anything. No, they just did not have an opportunity to practice that. That was not encouraged.
Right.
So I guess I'm in that way gentle with male clients. I think I like to let them have some control and I definitely don't want them to feel attacked and get the defense thing, because that's happened a lot in their life, and that's not, that's kind of their go-to. Maybe sometimes even, between other men, they are like sort of like compare, I don't know, incomes and boats and cars, So I don't want to, I'm trying to break that pattern. So I do, meet them as where they are, kind of. And I'm trying to, so the way, definitely the way that I see they sometimes try to get control. Is that sort of that kind of very general, this is what I'm going to, this is not, no. Like, what do you, they ask more questions, I think, right? What do you think? They want to know, right? Like, what's happening over there? I need to know,
Right.
And they do ask, male clients ask me more about me. I think that makes them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like makes them a little bit uncomfortable that, part of it is I think they're assessing if I know what I'm doing.
Okay.
That's being a woman. You have to prove it. Like there's it doesn't tough. It doesn't come with just the title, the letters behind you. Like even that doesn't the degree, all that doesn't get me that. So they will check if I'm kind of. I don't think any female client ever asks me about what degree I have, like, what experience I have. You know? Male clients do, So, and then they ask me.
I get that from parents. I don't really get that from other men or women. I get that from parents all the time.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, right?
Just because of my age.
Yeah, sorry.
But yeah, that's
sorry, not sorry.
Tough. Right. That'd be tough if it was like a whole half of a gender that was constantly questioning.
Yeah. So they sort of, So that those questions, but also, they will ask me if I'm married. They will ask me if I have kids. So they feel like that kind of gives me credibility, I suppose.
Yeah.
What marriage is like, and so they, I guess they will do more of that. They will be more cautious, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of comes with that. They will sort of like test me. They will test me. And I kind of, I don't know. Maybe that's wrong, but I do let them. I not. Like test them to the point. I will call them out eventually.
Yeah.
It's like, I hear that you're like struggling with, I see, that. That's, I don't know, like sometimes, and even deeper in a therapy relationship, male client is, I think, more likely to sort of like, whenever we get to actually raw feelings, jump out of it with like, what do you think? Or like, what do you know? Or it's sort of like to me, it feels like I'm about to fall in the hall. I need to know if that the hall is safe and you're going to have me there,
Yeah.
Because you're a woman. What do you know?
Yeah.
Well, not that, but
I can see that with like I've never thought about that aspect of it. Like you sharing that experience, like I've never analyzed like my experience in that. I think I do think guys establish credibility more by like the intellect thing. Where girls establish credibility maybe by like, can I be understood? Can I be listened to? Guys are looking more at like status and stuff like that because that's how we're taught. Like, are you like the star football player? What's your position? Like military, what's your rank, office? Yeah. What's your rank? Like, like I think we're taught we have worth based on status, and girls have worth like based on if they're understood and connected.
With female clients, it's sort of like within first 5 minutes, they already tell me, "Oh my gosh, that's great! This is totally, they don't ever care, but they feel connected, they feel understood. Sure. I'm easy to talk to, and that's all they need, pretty much. And male client will not like at the end of the session, okay, I think that could work. I feel like but that's not going to be the only component. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think a lot about that because like I wonder I've never thought of that. I wonder if your male clients do that with you, or do it quicker or do it a little less, Teenage boys, I really just have to say what video games I'm playing, and I have them, they are in my pocket. Older ones, I feel like I do have to establish credibility through like what I do. Like some of my hobbies in my personal life, I feel like establishes credibility. Something to relate to. Yeah, and like ironically, I'm wearing like my Clemson hoodie. That's where I went to school. And like to be frank, like I did not care at all about football until I went to Clemson, and then because they were like in the national championships games, and like the South is a unreal experience with football. So like me just being like, oh my gosh, like I love college football. Like I don't, but I do now because of Clemson. And like going to like at least currently is a prestigious football school. Like that establishes like an odd credibility in a way. That's interesting. Yeah.
Even if the guy isn't into sports, it's almost like that establishes like a credibility. But like now that you're saying that, I've never noticed that like with guys, I'm saying a lot more about like my degree, my school, my education, my work experience than I am with female clients.
Right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Right? I don't know.
But like, I don't want to discredit your experience.
No, that's
as a like woman counselor, but like I've never thought of that. But now that I'm reflecting on it, I think I do that.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it may have been like more of a thing with me because because I don't know anything. I'm a girl. So.
Like if it was like that they were nailing me down on like classes and stuff like that, then I would be probably irritated and annoyed, and then I would maybe notice it. So like that's probably what you're noticing is that like they probably are stricter with you than me.
Yeah.
Even if guys establish credibility the same, like they're vetting you more than they vet me. I think so,
probably,
Yeah.
But it's good to know that they're vetting you too.
Brilliant. I didn't think about it.
But maybe because maybe as a guy you're also used to that.
Right.
It's sort of like in that relationship where we're supposed to connect, that's gonna be part of this.
Yeah.
Right? I can have girlfriends and can have deep conversations with them about, and I don't know if they have a degree ever. Like that's not even. Right. I'm not even sure what they do for a living. Right. That's not. That's something that somewhere there comes up.
Yeah.
Not that this is. I mean, it's still an important thing.
For sure.
So I don't know.
Sorry. Like, I really hope this doesn't come across as like I'm invalidating your experience, but that just made me think about how, it reminded me of actually like a current situation I'm going through, which I won't say much about the situation. I'll say just like generically that like, women almost like dismiss my work experience or education if they don't feel like that's what their friends are saying, or it's not necessarily what they want to hear. Not necessarily my client, but like if it's a parent of a client or a spouse of a client, like that type of stuff, like they're kind of like, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about because my friend says this. And like this happened with my friend's relationship and my friend's counselor and stuff like that. Like women tend to undermine me, or at least like undermine my degree, my profession, my professional experience, like if their friends are saying something different.
Well, yeah, the power. But that totally confirms the whole point. See, like, because I guess as much as men have no experience, well, less experience with talking about feelings and relationships and stuff, like women know that, right? That have been their experience. Like, man, like how are you gonna tell my husband? You have no idea how to, be a partner in a relationship either, right? Because you're a man, right? He needs to hear that from an expert, a female, right? So funny, huh?
This has been like supervision for me. We've just like recorded my supervision.
I'm gonna charge you. That's kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
That women will question your even like, self-awareness and stuff. Because as a man, that's not what you do,
Yeah. Like
double-edged sword, huh? Big time.
Very double-edged sword. Wow.
Yeah.
This is very therapeutic for me.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
What else do we want to say?
Other than like, yes, maybe it's a little bit more complicated. Like we've kind of emphasized on all our things, like that connection piece is important, even if it's pushing your buttons, like stretching yourself as a client, or like I don't think people realize how stretched we are all the time. Just like, because we just like take whatever comes in the door, and at some point it pushes our buttons too. Sometimes without us like even realizing it. Obviously, if I'm trying to process that right now. But like lean into the awkwardness. Like be willing to be uncomfortable.
Always, right?
Yeah.
The awkwardness is where we grow, get to the bottom of things. So I definitely sort of, I don't know, piggyback on that with all the clients, and that's do that. And with male clients, I do, like, if I feel like that is playing a role and hasn't come up yet, I will notice that, right? Like, okay, like, I know I'm a girl, like, think about it. If sometimes at the beginning, when especially younger clients, when they're like with pornography issues, I will tell them, like, I'm a girl, so if you ever feel like you want to say something and you would to a male or a guy, just tell me that, okay? That there's something, but you're not comfortable saying that to a girl. Yet.
Right.
Because you're right. I think it is important, especially about the intimate stuff, and a lot of guys did not have good experience yet. There's also, like, while we're talking about this, men have it hard. I know we always hear, like, I don't want to like sound like anti-feminist or anything. I'm actually, in therapeutic sense, I am a feminist. I do like to stand up for anyone that has it harder in some aspect, right? So there's lots of expectations, lots of pressures on men, like all this, like, like even with, so we talk about pornography, sex addictions, even with sex, like they're supposed to always want it, and that's ridiculous, or
the pressure to always initiate it.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
We have to read signs. We have to know exactly if they want to hold their hand or cuddle or kiss or whatever.
It's crazy. It's ridiculous. So by the time they do make it to my office, they had really like bunch of bad experiences, right? Whether they were judged to not be sexual enough, or too sexual, or be pervert, or like be somehow less of a man because they won't want sex all the time. That stuff. So they already have been kind of, put down. I don't know where I was going to with that, but it was very important to say that. And in the meantime, they did not have this, before the whole sex thing came up, they were not trained to talk about relations. They were not ever like, you hurt my feelings.
Right.
Girls get to say it. Boys really, no, they get
Right.
to punch each other or something,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Get the, steal a toy or something, you know? So, so I think it is, first of all, it's important for them to come to therapy, heal from that.
For sure.
And learn, right? And
Yep.
I do like I like that you said that. I like to think that.
Yeah.
Because some of that damaging experiences have come from females,
For
right?
sure.
From
For
girls making fun of someone that they're not fast enough or strong enough on a playground, right?
Right.
I'm sorry, but girls do that too, you know?
Right.
So then from...
Go ahead. No, keep going. Keep going. Sorry. Personal Zach is having a lot of thoughts, but Personal Zach also does not want to talk right now.
And I will respect that. So anyway, so I feel like that's... So with male clients, more than with anything, just like with teenager, I think I'm very protective of the relationship. I will be their kind of safe person first, before they will ever consider telling me about how hurt they were and how mistreated they've been and all that stuff, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So, I know where I was going with that. So at the end of the day, they get to have an experience with a female that will not shame them and will not shame them in any way for anything, really, you know? So,
I think that's a super valuable experience. If guys are willing to embrace that, that's a super valuable experience. Granted, not every female therapist is willing to do that. But
True.
Go for it.
It's not like, just FYI, it's not like I talk about porn all day, okay?
Right. Because there's so much more to sex addiction, porn addiction than just the
it's
porn
an addiction,
or just the sex.
right? And it's under any addiction,
there's trauma, there's emotions, there's relationships, there's boundaries, there's
the addiction is usually just a symptom.
Thought processes, like all sorts of things. So like even me, I rarely talk about actual pornography or actual sex when I'm talking about that stuff.
Yeah, so that's good to kind of remember that it's sort of like, to me, I kind of like treat it as a symptom when we talk about it. So whether it's sex, porn, video games, or alcohol or drugs,
absolutely,
it kind of comes down to some of things, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
We better wrap this up before Personal Zach starts sharing all this.
It's going to be an interesting drive home for you.
Yeah. I'll have to process through a lot.
You go for it. All right. Well, thank you, everybody who listened or not, for being with us. Please do this. This is a big topic, so please do comment wherever we will post it. Just leave us comments. We will definitely go through them and see if we need like a part 2 to this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be kind to us. Yeah.
That would be nice. Thank you.